and welcome back to Listening Librarians. Katie and I are here today to talk about some of our favorite audiobooks of the year, because it was a really good year for books.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What do you think were some of the areas that you read in the most? What genres?
Ooh, great question. Well, my husband jokes that I only read historical fiction and that historical fiction is always sad, but that's not true. I also probably read a lot of YA is probably going to be, not that that's a genre, but, all over the place with the teen books, just because they tend to be quicker and nice little adventure, maybe a nice little romance, and
there are a lot of really good YA books out there
for sure.
So,
what about you?
Well, I don't know what I would have read the most of. I mean, I tend to read a fair amount of romance audiobooks, but I think I kind of surprised myself with the number of nonfiction audiobooks I listened to this year. I mean, a couple that were memoir-ish, but then some other things too, and I don't know, maybe that kind of vibes with my getting into podcasts more. But
yeah, for sure.
It's something you can put on, listen to, learn something, and feel like, okay, well, that was a pretty productive time.
And with nonfiction, if you have a good narrator, it's sometimes more interesting than if you were to just read it, with on your eyeballs.
Yeah, someone who really gets you into the subject and makes it interesting. Because there was one who was narrating a book about, this isn't on my list, but it was a book about the Milky Way.
Okay.
And the way she narrated it was very engaging.
Nice.
So that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have several books to cover. And since I've got 3 and you've got 2, I'll go ahead and start.
Yay, okay.
All right, so I will start with probably the most serious of my 3 books, and that is The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks-Dalton. It came out in 2022, and it would fit into the sort of genre of climate fiction.
Okay.
Because the story is in a future Florida, not too distant Florida. It's being worn away by repeated storms and sea level rise. And our initial main character is Kirby Lowe, who is a line worker, and he has a wife, Frida, and 2 sons, Flip and Lucas. Frida is pregnant, and she's actually his second wife. She's not Flip and Lucas's mom.
Okay.
So this is a child who's going to be the other half of the family. They've got a hurricane bearing down on them. It's called Hurricane Wanda. And as you come across so many times in stories where a woman is heavily pregnant and a storm comes in, she gives birth in the middle of this hurricane.
Of course.
While Kirby is out working.
Oh.
And the boys are just kind of uncontrollable because they've been cooped up in the house and they want to go play, whatever. So I'm not going to get into the whole details of what happened, but Frida does give birth to a daughter who then gets named after the storm, which is kind of a curse on the poor child. Frida does not survive much after the birth. And there are some other things that happen in this really traumatic storm that, again, I'm not going to go into. It's early enough in the book, but I still don't want to spoil it because of how it affects the rest of the book. But then we follow Wanda as she grows up, and we see she's got this real affinity for the water. It's almost magical in a way. I mean, there's a bit of magical realism to it, but it's the kind that makes you think that I just imagine what was being said here, or I'm not sure. But because she's grown up in this environment, she's able to adapt to the changes in the environment much more than the rest of her family, and she gradually loses more of her family, but she gains a new kind of community, starting with this older woman who's a bit of a prepper on her own, who teaches Wanda a lot of things, but then beyond that as well. So in many ways, it's kind of a grim story because it hits so close to what has already been happening, especially to places like Florida. But there's also a lot of hope in the book, too. So I think it's a really worthwhile read if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be up for it. And
not
I get
a beach
that.
read.
Not a beach read. Yeah, definitely not a beach read.
For a couple reasons.
Yeah. But I definitely think it's a worthwhile read to think about, okay, so here are changes that are coming and how do we adapt? What are the important things to take with us into the future? It's about 11 hours long, so it's not a real short read and it's not a real easy read, but it's very well narrated by Rosemary Benson. And for me, it was a surprisingly memorable book that every now and then I think back to it and it's just very vividly in my mind. So I think that's why it's one of my best ones this year. How about you?
So I will also talk about one that starts with a birth, ironically. So this is The Wolf and the Whale by Jordanna Max Brodsky. It is narrated by the author, and it's 18 hours. And normally I look at that and I go, do I have this kind of time? But I really, really enjoyed this. Now, there are some major trigger warnings, also not maybe the lightest book. Trigger warnings, rape, domestic violence, a pretty brutal murder of a child, and animals, and then slavery, and what we would call transphobia, but the book takes place in 1000 AD, so slightly different wording of what's going on, and I'm not even sure if that's the right description. So let me explain our main character. So our main character is Omat. This is an Inuit who was born into a female body at the exact same time that her father was dying. And Inuit tradition would say that his spirit would live in his child's body. So his name was Omat. Her name is Omat. And so Omat is raised as if she is a boy because her father is also a part of her. And so she participates in male roles like hunting. So we follow Omat through childhood into adulthood. Along the way, she becomes a shaman like her grandfather. And to do this, Omat must go on this very dangerous journey to find her spirit animal guide. And there's a rule to being a shaman, and that is that you must be responsible. You can't bother your spirit animal all the time. It's got to be like dire circumstances. But the spirits, particularly her guide, have a different plan for Omat.
Oh boy.
And so, like I said, it's classic coming of age along the way. And I won't get into like why Omat is going on a journey. But Omat meets a Viking named Brander. And so if you know your history, he's there with Leif Erikson. And he and his clan are there to be, your typical Vikings. They're not maybe the nicest. There's a lot of pillaging. There's some raping. It is, like I said, kind of violent at points. But Brander he's not perfect, but he also doesn't want that to be his identity, and he doesn't like the violence that his clan members are participating in. So he kind of separates from the group. They end up meeting up. And it was just a really interesting, there's a lot of mythology, both Inuit and Norse mythology is one of probably my favorite things, especially not knowing much about the Inuit peoples. And then the world building was just incredible. This barren landscape in the Arctic was really well described. And then, just that overarching theme of the power of storytelling and believing in yourself. So Omat was a very interesting character. So it was a long journey, because I said it was 18 hours, but it didn't feel like it was really long because there's a lot of adventure built in, and Yeah, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, not necessarily one you can listen to all in one shot.
Yeah.
But it keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Sounds good. Well, on the lighter side.
Yes. Yeah, let's move on.
Switch over to something lighter. My second book is The Secret Service of Tea and Treason by India Holton. Now, this is the third in a series of 3.
Okay.
It's historical romance, slightly fantastical, a lot of adventure, and a lot of humor.
Love that.
I mean, a lot of humor. You've really got to read it tongue-in-cheek. Our main character is Alice, who is, when we first see her, she's basically a lady's maid.
Okay.
And we have seen her in the previous 2 books as well. But she's also Agent A, the top spy for the Agency of Undercover Note Takers, which has the acronym of ANT. So we're thrown back to The Man from U.N.C.L.E.,
Yeah.
spy spoofs, that kind of thing.
Clever.
So she is, after one little mission, she's called into the head office, and she is asked to investigate this plot to assassinate Queen Victoria.
Not nice.
But she's not allowed to work on her own on this. For this, she is expected to work with Agent B, who is her top rival.
Oh.
And Agent B turns out to be one Daniel Bixby.
I assume he is also handsome.
I mean, different strokes for different folks,
Okay.
I'm sure. But he has been masquerading as a manservant / butler, and they have already clashed a couple of times.
Okay.
So not only have they had this animosity between them, but now knowing, oh, this is the rival that other people tell me about. Oh, this, I don't know if this is going to work. And to top that off, in order to work together, they have to pose as husband and wife at a house party of pirates.
Classic rom-com with a pirate twist.
You can just kind of see how this is going to go off the rails in the most entertaining fashion possible. It's just wild. Really, that's all I need to tell you about the plot, because you can kind of figure out it's going to be hijinks and unwitting romance and that sort of thing. What I found especially intriguing about the book is both of these main characters, Alice and Daniel, are both coded as neurodivergent. Alice in particular really takes things at face value a lot. So if Daniel says something very colloquial, she'll ask him a question, as in, why would I want to do X? And he's like, no, it's a figure of speech. And she's just like, oh, well, why didn't you say what you meant then? And it's little things like that.
Yeah.
They become misunderstandings, but as they learn more about each other, they recognize kindred spirits in each other.
Okay.
And so they learn how to work together better. Just really find that funny, humorous, happy ever after. And, thwart the plot and
yay.
All sorts of fun things.
Well, yay for neurospicy representation.
Yeah. I just love how the books are written, because the beginning of each chapter, you know how in sort of old-fashioned books, at the beginning of a chapter, they would make little phrases as to the action you're going to come across in the chapter. They do that with this here too, but it's very, very funny. So that was always entertaining to hear the narrator read those out and then try and figure out, okay, so where's this happening? Where's this happening? It's just a whole lot of fun. It's about 10 hours. And like I said, it's the third book. So reading the first 2 books, I would recommend that too. But I think this third book is the best of the 3.
Okay.
And the narrator is Elizabeth Nolden, and she delivers it in such a wonderfully dry British way that, it makes all of the lines pop.
Okay.
And you'll find yourself listening and just suddenly laughing out loud because it catches you off guard
Okay.
with how funny some of the lines are.
Nice.
Yeah.
So my next book is brand new. It just came out a couple of months ago. I literally just finished it. And it is Reykjavik, a crime story. It is co-written by Ragnar Jonasson, who is a very well-known Nordic noir Icelandic writer, and then Katrin Jakobsdottir, who is actually the Prime Minister of Iceland. So, like, she's already very busy, and now she's helped write this book. So it is 8 hours. It is narrated by Bert Seymour and Tamarin Payne. And it begins in 1956 with this police officer named Christiansen. He is sent to V-Day, which is this tiny, largely uninhabited island off the coast of Reykjavik, to follow up on a report that this young girl has gone missing. Her name is Laura. So you learn that Laura has been working as a maid for the only two people who live on V-Day. The two people who live there, the man is a very well-known and wealthy lawyer, and so the lawyer and his wife are like, she told us that she was quitting, and she just like abruptly, and she just packed up her stuff and left, and we thought she got back home, but her parents, who knew she was coming, they can't find her, so that's why Christian is there. So she never made it back to Reykjavik. So the question is, of course, did she leave V-Day? Did something happen? Is she alive? Unfortunately, Christian is never given the support he needs, and it becomes a cold case. And then we cut forward in the book 30 years later to 1986, and a reporter named Valor has decided to help his boss out, sell some newspapers by doing a whole series about Laura's disappearance. And so he's re-interviewing everybody. He talks to Christian. And however, as Valor gets closer to the truth, we learn that there are maybe some powerful voices who want to keep what happened to Laura a secret. So what I liked, classic whodunit, great twists, historical fiction that I was not expecting. I've been to Iceland, so I just kind of went, I'll read this.
Sure.
So in 1986, Gorbachev and Reagan actually met in Iceland. So that is depicted within the novel. And then another great aspect was Valor's sister, Suna. She helps him with the investigation. And she was just like a really good character. And I thought authentically written for someone who is kind of thrown into what ends up being perhaps a more intense situation than she was expecting. So, yeah.
Now, wasn't that based on a true story? Did I read that somewhere?
I don't know.
I thought I read that somewhere because I had seen something about the book before it was published and thought, oh, that sounds interesting because like you, I've been to Iceland and I'm intrigued.
I will have to look that up.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if it's based on a true case, but... But yeah, interesting that the Prime Minister had some time to work on it,
I know. I felt like because I've read some of his other novels, and I could almost feel where she inserted herself as an author, because it was like little historical facts. Yeah. Like, oh, at the Prime Minister's house, which was built in blah, 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 with the, and, like somebody who clearly works with the tourism world a lot would know, and just, it would make me chuckle every so often. So you also get the bonus of inadvertently learning a little bit about Iceland at the same time.
I mean, darn.
Yeah. All right, well, what was your third favorite book of 2023?
All right, my third one, I'm going to go easy on you. It's a short one. It's approximately 3 hours long. It's a cozy fantasy, very, very low stakes, just more a slice of life kind of thing. It actually reminds me of a couple of manga.
Okay.
The book is The Nameless Restaurant, and it's by Wong. Came out in 2023. And the restaurant of the title is this little restaurant tucked away in some little corner of Toronto. There's no sign. It has bad service and a grumpy owner. It also has no set menu.
Oh.
It just kind of changes at the whim of the owner.
Okay.
But the food is absolutely amazing. And the people who come in, and it's like each chapter is a short story focusing on one customer.
Clever.
Each character then, they've got a different dish, and how this interacts with what their day has been like or changes their mood. Gradually, some of these little stories cross over because character A might see character B across the room and wonder what's going on with character C, and just little things like that. If you're into really heavy character driven or heavy plot driven kinds of books, you might get bored with this, but it's just very
nice,
gentle and entertaining, and the characters are somewhat interesting. The story is somewhat interesting, but it's about the food. And since I am about the food, I'm about the book. It's also narrated by Emily Wu Zeller, and we come across her a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a great narrator.
Done so much.
Yeah, she just pulls you in, creates the atmosphere, makes you hungry.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you're a foodie, it's a nice quick one to listen to and enjoy.
Yay.
I think there may be more coming out in that same universe. I haven't seen any yet, but it looks like there might be. So maybe next year. Who knows?
And speaking of next year, so in 2024, we have a couple exciting things happening. One, Kimberly, who has been with us for quite a few of our Listening Librarians talks, she's going to be with us like all the time now. So yay. Welcome to Kimberly officially. And then January, we are going to kind of spice things up a bit by reading each other's recommendations. So we made a list of, audiobooks we had already listened to personally and said, hey, Jennifer, I think you would like to read this. And so it's going to be fun to be able to, talk to each other about, did I like it or did you give me a terrible recommendation? So
I won't tell. Yeah, and hopefully they'll all be books that we haven't talked about before. I mean, some of the ones we've recommended we have talked about, but I think what we've ended up choosing, the three of us, will give you some new titles to consider. So it should be interesting, and maybe we can do a little bit of back and forth on each book about what did you enjoy, what did I enjoy, what did you not like, what did I not like.
Yep.
That kind of thing. So, and we have other fun themes planned as well. So
for sure,
we are looking forward to a great new year.
Yes. So thank you for joining us for this month's Listening Librarians, and we will see you in 2024.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.